Many people had already been rescued from the hotel, but the fire was still out of control. On the streets below the hotel, Joan Benevento waited, hoping that her husband and their children were still alive. The injured were brought to a makeshift triage area near the hotel pool.
Most of the victims had respiratory problems because of the smoke. Fractures or some kind of burns.
Among the wounded on the pool lounge chairs, Joan Benevento found her husband, John. Both his legs had been broken when he jumped from the casino window and fell 15 feet to the roof below.
By the time I arrived, he had been told that the kids were inside, and he was just yelling, "God won't take my kids. God, please don't take my kids." He was just beside himself, and I think having to deal with him and try and get him calmed down helped me at least start to move and think again.
National Guard Colonel Jose Maldonado was the third chopper pilot on the scene.
Our blades were just simply too large to land on top of the building, so what we did is we hovered next to the building, placed the helicopter with one skid on the side of the building, and people jumped onto our helicopter. The smoke columns and the heat columns coming up jolted our helo. Sometimes it would just take us off. The smoke got very thick. I was afraid fire was going to progress through the building.
We stood behind the barriers, and it was probably the longest hour that we've ever spent.
And I happened to just focus my eyes on two girls coming down out of the rooms. When they were just 3/4 of the way down, it just hit me that it was them.
And at that point, there was no barrier that can stop us. We just tore in, we jumped over the barrier, and we ran over. All four of us were holding on to one another, crying, and just a very joyful reunion. And it was just something that will never, ever go from our minds.
John would not go in an ambulance. He would not go anywhere until he knew something about the kids.
It was totally helplessness for me, not to be able to get up. All I thought about 4 hours were my children. Where are they? Were they upstairs? Were they in an elevator? I was just praying that somebody would find them and help them.
By sundown, 8 choppers were involved in the rescue efforts. But it would soon be dark, and Bonnie Busey had still not heard from her husband, Nick.
Hours were going by and hours were going by, and, there was no Nick. At the beginning of the fire, my biggest concern was me being pregnant and an unborn child. And I didn't see Nick for a long time. Then I think my concern was for him.
It took about 5 hours to extinguish the fire. As soon as I was assured by the firemen that they have confined the fire, I sent people with self-contained breathing apparatus to make sure that nobody was still there desperate and looking for help.
It was dark, so I hadn't seen Nick for about 5 hours. And I didn't know where to look. Our friends were staying at a hotel nearby, so I finally got to that hotel. I went inside. And when I walked through the doors, that's when I saw Nick. It was just a very happy moment.
After helping more than 150 other people get off the roof, Nick Busey got into one of the last helicopters himself.
The helicopter rescue was over. There were no more people being brought down.
You're thinking the worst things that imaginable. Why are you thinking of them dead?
When I just had no other places to turn, I thought I saw some movement up in the balconies. And as we came across the street and got a little closer, I could see that, in fact, there were people on a balcony. And a little closer, I could see that someone was carrying someone. a little closer still, and that person was a little person, and then the dark hair, and then I saw that it was Brandon.
7-year-old Brandon Benevento had been kept safe in a 14th floor room by a couple who did not know him.
Someone was holding me back in the crowd because I was trying to get through, and I'm sure they probably thought I was some crazy person. I could see he was okay. Just all of the commotion after all he had been through was very upsetting to him. I was checking to see if I could find Chandra.
Within minutes, 10-year-old Chandra was put into the arms of a waiting friend. Chandra had been kept with her brother by the same couple. Her father was the last to hear.
Somebody came screaming over. They found him. They found him. Kept saying, "Are you sure? Are you positive? It's my children."
I was so happy to see them. It was just an unbelievable moment.
Only when he finally heard that the children were safe would John Benevento allow himself to be transported to a hospital for treatment.
It was probably one of the most happiest moments of my life, to know they'd come out of that building alive.
The next day, the bodies of 98 people were removed from the charred hotel. Arson investigators determined that the fire had been deliberately set. Hotel workers involved in a labor dispute had thrown a lit can of flammable material into an empty storage room. They were subsequently sentenced to life in prison.
There was a lot of gloom. The whole city took it to heart that there was a disaster. And still, they saved so many lives.
Hundreds of men, women, and children were rescued that day. Nearly half lifted off the roof by helicopter.
Those helicopter pilots were unbelievably tremendous. They were the best that anybody could ever ask for at the time that you needed a pressure person.
In the past 3 years, Nick Busey has gotten many awards for his bravery that New Year's Eve. Within a few months of the fire, Bonnie gave birth to their first child.
When Megan was born, I'd have to say it was probably the happiest moment of our lives.
Our baby was healthy, Bonnie was healthy, which is all I wanted. And thank God things worked out for as many people as it did.
The Benevento family has gone on with their lives, but John lost a lifelong friend. And the fire is still a vivid memory for Brandon and Chandra.
I was scared of death, and I was scared of never seeing my parents again and my friends at school. It was nice that my brother and I were together, though. That was the good part about it.
My dad was in the casino, but what I didn't know is if he had escaped. And when I saw him, I was just so happy. I didn't know where he was or anything. I was just so happy to see him.
I think it's been very hard for John. I think what these people in that casino went through, I think he saw some sights that I wouldn't want to see in a movie.
But you look back, and could I have saved some of my friends if I didn't run out of there, or would I have died with them? And to this day, I mean, you just miss them.
A lot of times I think of all the people that died in this fire, and I think how lucky I am that I'm not even hurt. I was like, lucky we're alive, all of us.